As introduced by our moderator before this. So my class usually I'll handle in a casual way. So feel free to interrupt, feel free to jump in if you have any questions or anything to clarify. I'm okay with that. Feel free to come in. All right, so what I'm going to cover today for comparative political system will be, I give a general idea first. What is comparative politics? Followed by, I'll do comparison in terms of the basic political system in the world. Because I realized that I cannot cover everything. So therefore, I pick a few that is commonly practiced in the world. And since it is a triple IT program, I'll try to include another theocracy, Islamic theocracy state for this lecture. All right. So we go to the beginning first about the definition and scope. So the very simple question is that what is comparative politics? So generally, for example, in IIUM, we have 4 specializations within the department. Yeah, although we are not rigidly disintegrate ourselves or not rigidly separate ourselves, but in general, we agree that we offer 4 specializations. One is international relations. That specialization usually will deal with a lot of external issue of the country. For example, diplomatic relations, for example, war studies, and so on. Second one is more to political theory or political thought, just like what happened in previous week, where we have our colleagues who talk about political theory, political thought, the philosophy of it. So that will be the second specializations. Third one is about public administrations. Generally, it will deal with internal administrations of the country. For example, government budget, bureaucracy, how government run the day-to-day operations, and so on. So today for comparative politics, basically we're going to study about the structural system within the country itself. Within the country, meaning, for example, we talk about how to choose the leader of the country, president, prime minister, how the election function in the country, how power is being utilized in the country. So these are among the scope for comparative politics. And usually when we talk about comparative politics, we are comparing from one country to at least another country in terms of their domestic political structure. All right. So coming back to the slide, comparative politics basically examining the political realities of the world, and it is systematically studies on the comparison between different cases, just like what I mentioned just now, and mainly focuses on the political system within the country. Later on, we're going to go into more detail about what is political system. Now, one interesting thing about comparative politics is that when we want to build the most common way how we utilize theory is we have existing theory, and we'll try to use those existing theory to expand on the current scenario or the scenario of the cases that we want to study. When we talk about grounded theory, it is a reverse, meaning we are going to come up with a general principle or general framework on how situations can happen. Or at a higher scale, we can even invent a new theory. But the thing is, how to invent a new theory? We need to have enough empirical data. So this is one of the way on how to get the data through grounded theory. We collect a lot of different elements, different happenings, different incidents within different countries, different system, and we look at the similarities, and from there we derive a general theory. All right, that's why we talk about comparative politics. Now, like what we said just now, we are doing comparisons between countries to country, between state to state, and so on. The thing is, how to compare? For example, we say that, okay, now we want to categorize country based on their democratic level, meaning which country is democracy country, which country they are not democratic. But the thing is, what is democracy? Different people have different definition. Even if you talk about scholars, different scholars draw the line at a different angle. So how to do it? So therefore, when we want to do classifications, it is very important that we must have clear criteria. What do we want within the classifications? And a good classifications is a classification where the category that you create will be mutually exclusive. Meaning, if you put a category into category A, B, C, So this state should fall in which category? A good classification is this state can only fall in category A or B or C. It wouldn't be like, well, this state can be like, category A, okay, seems to be okay. Category B seems to be okay. It is not a good classification because it seems to be overlap. All right. So we emphasize on, if possible, to be mutually exclusive and they have jointly exhaustive, meaning there's a linkage from one to another. Let's say we talk about democracy, meaning category A is the most democratic country. Category B is less democratic country. Category C is even less democratic. So at least we can see the continuity over there. All right. This is about a good way of classification. Now, interesting part will be the third one. Political phenomenon is often difficult to classify. It is unlike rigidly hard facts issue where easy for you to categorize in the sense of black is black, white is white. But when we talk about political phenomenon, right, it is not that easy in the sense of there are a lot of ambiguous, a lot of gray area exists. So what we need to do now is, what is the element, what is the most important element for us to consider? Let's say there are three ways, example of three ways on how we can advise on the classifications. We talk about value judgment, meaning what are the value that you want to consider? For example, we talk about democracy. Democracy is so wide, so many things within democracy. And within democracy itself, the model itself, it can be contradicted to a certain extent. So what is the part or what is the value that we want to consider? We can use that. Or we highlight on certain aspect only. We want to measure the democratic level of a state. And we don't want to measure the whole idea of democracy because we know that it's too huge, it's too complicated. We just want certain element. For example, we just want to focus on election. Okay? Meaning we ignore human rights, we ignore freedom, we ignore good governance, we ignore everything. We just focus on election. Yeah, it's workable as well. That's why we say that classifications, what is the thing that we want? Third one is a purpose. All right. I believe maybe many of us familiar with Malaysian composition in terms of our demography, ethnicity. In Malaysia, generally, we have Malay, Chinese, and Indian. So when we talk about classifications in terms of ethnicity, the general way will be, okay, we categorize as Malay, Chinese, Indian. At least these three categories. Or sometimes the fourth is like others. For my PhD thesis, I categorize it into two categories only. Malay, non-Malay. Why? Come back to the third point, purpose. Because my purpose is going to study about the ethnicizations of politics within the Malay political circle or within the Malay ethnic politics and within the non-Malay ethnic politics. Therefore, I categorize it into only two categories. So why I did so? Because of the purpose of my study. All right. So these are among the idea how to do classifications. Why I come about this part is because of this slide. Now, democratic index. We often see that we can see a lot of index from time to time. For example, you can see democratic index. For example, every year, for example, in Malaysia, we're going to see like perceptions of media freedom by certain institute, or for example, in university level. We often seen about a ranking of the university. So which university rank first, rank second, and so on. So how do they measure? Now, very often, we as academics, we assume that that index is produced in an honest way, produced in a transparent way. So when we don't question about the governance of it, we don't question about the honesty of the result, usually we question about the methodology of it or the elements of it, meaning how do you come about the classifications? Like for example, in this report by EIU, the first sentence is a sentence that I like to show with my students. With political scientists unable to develop and agree a single detailed classifications of political system, it has been left to non-academic world to step into the breach. Why academics so difficult to come up with the classifications? The reason, like what I said just now, it's too wide. How to measure democracy is too wide, and nobody can claim that their definitions is a perfect version. You know, in academic world, right, we have to be able to convince others that our model is the one of the perfect model. So at the end of the day, all right, so how it functions is that we have EIU, another non-academic institution, is more to like think tank, more to like the economist, the magazine. They do classifications based on the criteria below, on how they measure democratic level of a country. Like from here, you can see, if you can see my cursor, I'm moving around. They look at the protections of basic political freedom, the fairness of elections, security of voters, election turnout, freedom of political parties, independence of judiciary, media, and so on. So these are the criteria that they use. Do you agree? Well, you can disagree. Maybe you can say that, well, when we talk about democracy, we have more elements that we should consider. Or you can also argue that when we talk about democracy, maybe fairness of, okay, maybe security of voters is not an issue, so we should not consider. Therefore, when you have less or more elements to consider the index, the ranking, the points given will be different. All right. So this is just an example on democratic index. So this is how the EIU categorized over it. In a general position, general situations, no matter what elements, as long as it's a conventional, it's a decent elements, you wouldn't run away too much. You wouldn't like, okay, for example here, Norway ranked as number 1, or the point is the highest, 9.93. When you use another system, they wouldn't drop too badly into like 5 or 6 out of 10. All right. Usually we have some deviations because of the different elements. So these are just for you to have an overlook on how EIU categorize the country. All right. Next, I'm moving into the comparisons of the basic political system in the world. All right. So these are among the 3 things that I choose, 3 comparisons: monarchy versus republic, parliamentary versus presidential, and federal versus unitary. When you roughly know about the elements of this system, it'll be very easy for you. For example, when you Google a country, you have no idea about what the country is all about. You Google the country, even you talk about Wikipedia, okay, a not so academically sanctioned source. When you see the word presidential, right, assuming it's a common country practicing the generic or the conventional version of presidential, by having the word, you roughly can know what are the major elements within a country. All right. Then you know that, okay, you have a president. You wouldn't have like a monarch. You wouldn't have a king, a sultan, whoever over there. When you talk about federal, for example, you saw the word federalism in the country, then you roughly know that it is a sharing of power. It wouldn't be one place like the central government dominate everything. All right. That's why today we're going to talk about roughly about the comparison. First, we talk about monarchy versus republic. So in a simple term, when you talk about monarchy state, it's referring to state where you have a monarch over there. All right. Of course, the word monarch depends on the country. Different country using different terms. In Malaysian, in Brunei, we are using the word sultan to represent the monarch. In Japan, they use emperor. In Saudi, in England, they use the word king. In Middle Eastern countries, some of them, they use the word sheikh and so on. It doesn't matter because it comes to the simple summary is that these are considered as a monarch. All right. Now, when we talk about monarchy, it can be divided into absolute and constitution. Absolute monarchy, we don't really have many in the world nowadays. If we talk about constitutional monarchy, we only left with lower double digits. All right. Absolute monarchy, example in a country like Brunei, Saudi Arabia, and so on, where the leader, the monarch itself, they have absolute power in terms of determining the administration of the country. And the rulers, basically, they are coming from the royal bloods. All right. Unlike constitutional monarchy, yeah, they are still coming from the royal bloods, meaning you wouldn't be monarchs out of sudden because of your father, because of your family member is a monarch, therefore you become a monarch. However, they do not have absolute power onto the daily administrations of the country. For constitutional monarchy, for example, like Malaysians, Japan, United Kingdom, and theoretically even to Thailand and so on. All right. So meaning, when you talk about constitutional monarchy, they are guided by the constitution itself. Meaning, yes, for example, in the context of Malaysia, yes, the king is the highest person in Malaysia. When we talk about protocol, talk about priority or importance of the list of people in Malaysia, the king will rank number one. But the king cannot do anything as he wish. He has to follow back the constitution. For example, the king entrusted to appoint a prime minister. So how to appoint? Can the king suddenly say, okay, I feel that I want to appoint Dr. Lau as the prime minister? Can he? Cannot, because I must be a member of lower house, meaning I need to win an election first. Only I'm qualified. Can he say, oh, I don't follow the rules, I straight away, I like Dr. Lau, I just appoint him? Can he? No, he can't. But when we talk about absolute monarchy, they can, because they have their own the power in terms of the administrations. Therefore, when I talk about constitutional monarchy, later compared with the presidential later, there's sort of like an extra layer of check and balance in general. All right. The reason is for monarchical system, for constitutional monarchy, the monarch itself will act as the head of state, meaning you are the leader of the country, but you hold all the power. Like the second last point, executive power is carried out in the name of the king, meaning you hold all the power technically with you as a constitutional monarch. But you will delegate the power to the commoner, meaning the prime minister, for their executions. If you realize, for example, like in Malaysian context, if you realize you may receive some official letter from the government and so on, then the first sentence at the envelope, in general, they'll use Malay word. They write something like Urusan Seri Paduka Baginda. English translation, something like His Majesty business or His Majesty matters or something like that. All right. Why? I mean, you never deal with the palace, you never deal with the monarch. Why you receive a letter from the king? The thing is, you are dealing with the government, and the government is exercising the power in the name of the king, because the king holds the power. That's why this comes to the third last point, is that the monarch in constitutional monarchy can act as an extra check and balance. Of course, to which level the monarch will act in that way depends on to what extent the monarch will interfere into the administration of the country. And this is something that I love to share with my students, a comparison in the reality world. I use 3 countries as example: Thailand, United Kingdom, and especially under Queen Elizabeth, and Malaysian context. When we talk about UK under Queen Elizabeth as a monarch last time, when she first became the queen, when she was young, she pledged that she would not interfere into the administrations of the country. She pledged it. Good or bad? Well, depends on how you look at it. I give you an example. UK, years back, they have an issue of Brexit, and a lot of prime minister collapsed because of Brexit. So among the final prime minister to deal with Brexit will be Boris Johnson. If you know Boris Johnson, the one with his hair a bit messy. Now, he is inclined to deal with European Union directly. But the thing is, according to UK parliamentary system, according to UK conventional practice, he must get permission or must get decision from the parliament. But when you can see from UK parliament, it was so messy because they cannot come out with the decision, even after a few prime minister. So one of the simplest way for him is he put the parliament to recess, and he will deal with European Union in the name of prime minister. How to put parliament in recess is that get the permission from the queen. Now, political circuit, by then they know that you cannot decide on your own as the prime minister, although you have certain provision to allow it. But the more gentleman way is you deal it in the parliament. But the thing is, he know that to deal in the parliament politically, in terms of strategy, is quite difficult. So he asked for recess. Go to have an audience with the queen, ask for permission to go on recess for the parliament. Need to get permission from the queen first. The situation, like I said just now, is because he shouldn't do it in that way, in a gentleman way. He should leave into parliament. But the queen position was, I pledged that I wouldn't interfere anything in politics. Whatever the Prime Minister proposed, whatever any Prime Minister requests, I'll consent to it. I wouldn't interfere. So she consented to it directly. No interference. Is it a good way? It may not be. Because the Queen, if she were to act in an extra layer, she were to interfere a little bit, and she didn't consent to it, then the case wouldn't need to go to the judiciary, to the courts. So, but if you see that, well, it is good for the monarch to act, to interfere whenever it's necessary. All right, unlike a puppet monarch where you are there just as a symbolic. Then we look at the example of, for example, in Thailand or in a few countries where the interference degree is higher for the country. Is it a good thing? It may not be good as well. Therefore, this is a very interesting question that we are still debating on to what extent or what is the role for the monarch. This is coming to the practical world. All right. But when we talk about theoretically, the role of the monarch in a constitutional monarchy should be as a symbolic, should be as a ceremonial figure. All right. Now, next one, we talk about republic. Like what I mentioned just now, when we talk about monarchy system, whether absolute or constitution, you have the monarch, the royalty blood, as the head of the state. And for constitutional monarchy, basically as a head of state, not as a head of government. But for Republican system, they act as both head of state and head of government. Meaning, for example, when I talk about a country with a monarch, for example, I talk about even like in Malaysia, when you get some awards from the head of state, like the medal, you know, so the monarch will give it to you. When I talk about republic country, it will be the president who give it to you because they are the head of state. At the same time, they are the head of government. They play two roles, meaning there's no anybody above them anymore. All right? And most countries in the world today, they are practicing this system, Republican system, where there's president, and the president is the highest person of the country. All right. Make it clear one thing, that republic country, not necessarily they have to practice presidential system. We have a lot of country, they are practicing parliamentary system, but they're having a president. Later on, we go into more details. What's the difference between that? Example, Singapore. They are practicing parliamentary system, just like Malaysian, actually almost the same as Malaysian, but they don't have a monarch. So they replace it with a president. Similar with India, they don't have a monarch over there, but they have a president to fill in the position similar as the monarch. All right. So for this country, we call it as republic. So in a simple term, simple comparison is monarchy, country with royalty blood. Republic, you have commoner to be there. All right. And when we talk about presidential system or republic with presidential system, we can divide it into executive president, like what happened in United States, what happened in the Philippines, and a lot of countries in the world. Executive president, meaning the president is really the head of state and head of government. We also have a nominal president. Nominal president meaning you are there just as a name, symbolically. All right. Your role basically almost similar as a monarch, just that you are not royalty blood. Okay, whether you are appointed or whether you are elected depends on the country. All right. Now, the next comparison we're going to do is about presidential versus parliamentary. When we talk about presidential democracy, right, we are referring to executive president, meaning the president is a head of state and head of government at the same time. And for this kind of system, in general, most of them will be going through election, direct elections. Definitely not all, but most of it, almost all of it, but not all, will be going through direct elections. Therefore, you realize that when you look at presidential election for any country, the votes, total up, the tally of the votes will become up to millions or tens of millions. All right. In Taiwan case, they have about 30 plus million per side, meaning total up about 70, 80 million votes. In Indonesian, similar case. In France, similar case, you are up to tens of millions. All right. So this is what I call direct election, meaning one person, one vote. Whoever get the most votes by head count, you win the elections. Of course, there are some special country. That's why what I said at the beginning. Things that we discussed today is a general principle for a country practicing conventional or traditional or the ideal version. But they may have some kind of special versions. Like in United States, their president is elected in an electoral college system. That's why you can only see total of 538 votes in total. All right. Next is about parliamentary democracy. It is the reverse. We talk about presidential elections, direct election, meaning you as a voter, you can directly elect who you want to be the president. Over here, parliamentary democracy, you wouldn't know who is your head of state, head of government. Head of state is fixed, parliamentary system. Your head of state is either a monarch, meaning the royalty, or a president, symbolic president, like India and Singapore case. Who is going to be the leader of your government, head of government? You wouldn't know. I mean, practically you know roughly, you can guess. But theoretically, you wouldn't know. Can you decide? You cannot decide. There's no way for you to decide. Why? Now, in a parliamentary democracy, who you're going to vote for is your member of parliament. All right? You're going to vote for your member of parliament. After you voted for all the member of parliament, they'll gather in the parliament and they'll choose among themselves who is going to be the prime minister. They'll choose among themselves. I'm the voter. Can I say, they choose ABC as a prime minister? Can I say, no, I don't want ABC. I want DEF as my prime minister. Can I? No, you can't. Under parliamentary system. Because parliamentary system, you voted for the member of parliament and they will decide on your behalf. That's why I said theoretically you wouldn't know. But why I say practically you know? Well, usually whichever party that win the most votes, usually the leader of the party will be the prime minister. All right. That's why I say practically, roughly you can guess, but theoretically you wouldn't know. Can they suddenly appoint some weird or special people as a prime minister? Let's say I contested a parliament seat in Malaysia as an independent candidate. I win. I have no political party. I have no political inclinations. I'm on my own as an independent candidate. Don't know for what reasons. I won the election. I win the elections, meaning I'm a member of parliament. But I'm not attached to any political parties. I go to parliament. Oh, there are so many big parties over there. Party A, Party B, Party C, so many big parties over there. Is it possible for me to be prime minister? Legally, constitutionally? Yes. As long as they say that, oh, we agree that Party A, Party B, Party C, we don't want to be prime minister. We appoint Lau as a prime minister. Can they? Can. Therefore, over here, we say that it is undecided. And the term for prime minister also is not that secure compared to presidential. Why? Prime minister, who appoint a prime minister? Member of parliament among themselves. This also means that anytime they can bring down the prime minister. As long as the member of parliament, more than half of them say that I have no confidence and to bring down the prime minister, yes, they can fill in a motion, bring down, just like that. Do they need a reason? Most of the country, they don't need a reason. All right. Germany may be a special case a little bit. Germany version is that, no, not to say that you cannot bring down, but they call constructive motion of no confidence. You can bring down a prime minister, a sitting prime minister, but you must have a replacement. Meaning, if A is brought down, B will be the prime minister. You already name who is going to be the replacement. But for most of the countries, including Malaysia, for those who are familiar in Malaysian politics, over the past few years, it's quite easy to bring down a prime minister because as long as you have more than half people disagree, you can bring him down. But the thing is, you want to nominate another person to be prime minister, can you secure another more than half? That's why for most of the country, they don't have the system like in Germany, meaning they may have a vacuum. All right? But the different thing for presidential is it's not that easy to bring down a president. Why? Who elect or who elect the president? It is the people itself. It is the voters, the commoner, we. All right? So the Congress or the Parliament, whatever name they name it, you cannot directly override the voice of the people because you are not the one who choose, but it is the people who choose. So you cannot bring down the president just like the parliamentary system. But of course, they have their mechanism. It's called impeachment. To cut the story short, impeachment is you bring a motion in their parliament or congress, and because of some wrongdoings, it must be a wrongdoing by the president. Therefore, you scrutinize the president and impeach the president, whether he's guilty or not. If he's guilty, then he can be brought down. Happened before in South Korea, very often actually in South Korea. And in US, they tried a few times, but not really successful, and so on. All right. Okay, I think if anyone have questions, feel free. You can just switch on your mic and jump in so that I don't need to reread the chat box again. All right. Okay. So done covering for this part. We cover for comparison, monarchy versus republic, parliamentary versus presidential. Now we go to this part, federal versus unitary. All right. At least you can have a rough idea how the political system in the world works. Now, when you talk about academically, there are three systems: federal, unitary, and confederations. Confederation, I put it aside. Later, I tell you why I put it aside. So today, we only can see federal system, or we call federalism, and unitary. The difference between these two is that concentrations of power. That's the most important point. For federalisms, it is about a system where you share power between federal government and state government. Meaning, the constitution will mention ABC is the power for the federal government. DEF is the power for the state government. Can the federal government interfere into the state government affair? We talk about generic first. We don't talk about the technicalities first. General principle is cannot. Can the state interfere into the federal matters? General principle is cannot. So they're separate. They're sharing a power. All right. Example countries, for example, in Malaysia and in US. Of course, I don't really like to use Malaysia as an example because in practice, it is not so ideal in terms of sharing power. Not like 50%, 50%. We talk about US, it's sort of, some power allocated to federal government and some power allocated with the state government. All right. For example, state government, actually in US, they're quite powerful in the terms of education is under them, health is under them, a lot of things is under them. If you heard about that, in US, certain states, they have death penalty. Certain states, they don't have death penalty. Why within a country you have two different systems? Because that power is at the state level. Where at the state level, every state can have different way. Right? Unitary is where the power concentrated in the hand of the central government. And the central government will delegate the power to the lower tier of government, like provincial government. Meaning, we go back to federal first. Federal government power derived from their constitution. State government derived from the constitution. Meaning, their bigger boss, their higher superior will be the constitution. But for unitary system, you're at the lower tier, for example, provincial level. Who gives you the power? It's not the constitution. It is the central government. So most of the power actually concentrated in the hand of the central government. Now, from here you can see sharing power in the hand of central government. Central have more power. So by logic, there may be another system where more power at the hand of state. All right, you can see the difference. Federal sharing, unitary more power at the central. Another system we call confederations, more power at the state level. Try to think it logically. Do you think it can work when you have more power at the state level? When we talk about more power at the central level, meaning the central will control the military, let's say. State and state, provincial and provincial, they wouldn't fight. Why? There's no military for them to fight because central more powerful. But we talk about confederations, just like in the ancient Greek era. State or the region itself, they are more powerful. They have military, they have everything. State more powerful than federal or central government. Do you think central government can control them well? They can't. State doesn't say that why I should listen to you, I have more power than you. Why should I listen? When the central government cannot control the state government, there's no point to have the central government anymore. That's why confederations cannot sustain, cannot survive. Because each of the states, if they fight among one another, the higher tier of government, meaning the central government, cannot control. So what's the point? All right. So in current context, most of the country in the world practicing unitary. So federalism, only about 24 countries. If you realize, most of the academic writing, right, they wouldn't give a definite word. They'll give the word like around, estimate, and so on. Why? Going back to our first and second slide, because of how you're going to measure it, how you're going to classify it. Federalism, there may be some country like seems to be federal country, seems not to be federal country. So how to classify it? Therefore, different scholars classify it differently. All right? Okay. Okay, I still have time. So I'm going to one interesting section is about theocracy state. All right. Theocracy state meaning a country where it is ruled by religious scholar or religious leader. All right. Depends on the scholar, like what I said just now. Not many scholars love to have a special category for theocracy state. Furthermore, there are not many theocracy state in the world nowadays. All right. When we talk about Islamic theocracy state, if you want to have that category, the nearest country I'll consider as Iran. What are the main elements for theocracy state? Number one, the leader will be a religious leader. All right. Government by religious leader, therefore it's rare. Not many countries you can see it. And most Muslim countries in the world, they're typically separate religious and civil leadership. No matter whether you call yourself as an Islamic state or whether you implement Hudu law or not, most of them, they still practice a high degree of secular administrations or secular legal system. All right. Yes, to a large extent, they Islamize the system, but a lot of them, they're still having a high degree of non-Islamic element within the country. That's why here say, since the end of Taliban rule in Afghanistan, 2001, a more nearer model of theocracy state or Islamic theocracy state will be Iran. Why Iran can be considered as the nearest one? Number one, it is led by an Islamic leader, all right, by a religious leader. Yes, at the same time, they are still ruled by a lot of secular officers. You cannot expect the whole governmental system, executive system, meaning the prime minister or the leaders, the cabinet members, even the administrators, the bureaucrats, all of them are religious leaders. You cannot afford to have so many. So a lot of the government officers or even government leaders, they may be secular. Secular in the sense of they are not having Islamic background and so on. But the final decision-making authority still lies with the highest leader. All right. For example, in Iran, it still lies with Ayatollah. Meaning, you guys can have all the rulings, you guys can have all the decisions. At the end of the day, they'll still make sure that, yes, this system, this ruling, this decision, this policy is in line with Islamic. So at the bottom, last few points is just about the technicalities and how it works. Actually, for those who's familiar with Malaysian political system, academic sharing, so I just give a exact example so that I can look it clearer. Furthermore, it's a political science course. For example, in PAS itself, a political party in Malaysia. For other political parties, as long as your central committee, the highest leadership in the party, they agree with certain policies, certain decision, that will be the final. But for PAS, it's interesting in the sense of whatever decided by the party leaderships or even by the General Assembly, considered the highest decision body, it is not final yet. You have to go through a council called Shura Council, and their role is to make sure that all the decision made is in line with Sharia. Is in line with Sharia. All right. Therefore, a bit similar with the Iran system in the sense of, I'm saying similar in the sense of whatever decision made at the end of the day, it will go through religious scholar, and the religious scholar will have a final say on whether that decision is it Sharia compliance or it is not Sharia compliance. All right. All right. I still have 5 more minutes. I covered electoral system so that roughly you can know about how election function in the world. Now, electoral system generally divided into 2 types. One is single member, meaning one constituency, you only have one winner. Second type is multi-member winner. Impeachment. Okay, for the question, I try to answer if I have time later. Now, electoral system, it can be divided into both systems. Single member, to cut it short, one winner for one constituency. So how to choose the winner? One of the simplest way, this I practice in a lot of countries, the most convenient one is called first past the post. Whoever get the highest number of votes, you win. You no need to get more than half. Meaning, let's say a constituency, you have 100 voters. Candidate A get 30 votes. Candidate B get 20. Candidate C get 20, 20, 10. 30, 20, 20, 20, 10. Who are going to win? 30. Why? You are the highest of all. Do you get majority support? Not really. You only get 30% of the votes. But because you are the highest, you will be declared as the winner. For majoritarian system, the different thing is they want to make sure that any candidate that win, you must get 50% plus one vote. Meaning if there's 100 voters, you must get 51 votes. There's 1 million voters, you must get 500,000 plus one vote. All right. This is to make sure that the winner, they can get majority support. So I try to fasten it. Run off meaning you have a lot of candidates, they contest, no problem, contest. How many votes you get doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you have two candidates with the highest number of votes, they advance to second round. Meaning they have to have 2 rounds. Usually happen only for presidential election. If not, well, a lot of logistics will involve. So for example, in France, they have 2 rounds, meaning you have so many candidate contests. At the end, 2 highest votes, you go to next round. Next round, people vote again. When you have 2 candidates contesting, right? Well, most likely, rarely or superb rarely, you cannot have a winner. Alternative vote is more complicated in the sense of you, instead of choose a candidate, you rank the candidate. You have 4 candidates, you're not choosing one. You're ranking them. Who is the most preferred? You put 1. Second most preferred, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So those who rank number 1, can you get 50% plus 1? If yes, you straight away declare as a winner. If you can't, the lowest voters will be eliminated. For example, candidate A, B, C, D. D is the lowest. Eliminate D, and D votes will be redistributed to those who rank them as number 2. Let's say you rank D, A, B, C. D eliminated, right? D, A, B, C, the vote will go to A. You rank D, C, B, D. So D eliminated, the vote will go to D, C, B, D, go to C, the second rank. Okay, this is the general principle. Now, next one is about multi-member system. Multi-member system, there are 2. Number 1 is winner takes all. Winner takes all meaning whoever win, the whole team win. Like in Singapore, they have group constituency, GRC, group representation constituency. The team win, 5 of them, 7 of them, shall we win everybody. Everybody win. A bit like US electoral system as well. You win more than half in the state, you get all the votes. All right. Another way is proportionate representation. This is more commonly used. The reason is more fair in the sense of the number of winning seats tally with the number of percentage of votes that you get. Meaning there's 200 seats. You gain 30% of the votes, meaning you're going to get 60 seats. Because 30% of 200 seats will be 60. So the number of votes that you get will convert into number of seats that you get. All right, this is a general principle. I think I left with 1 minute, so I try to answer the questions. Can you please clarify this idea of impeachment of a president, the lower house and at the Senate? The decision not to impeach is not accepted. Now, usually depends on the country. Different countries have different system. All right. I think maybe the country that you refer to, if I'm not mistaken, maybe to US, right? Because yeah, US is very famous, especially in Trump's era. US, they emphasize more onto the Senate. That's why if you realize, Senate, they are allocated with more power compared to House of Representatives. So Senate will be the one who take the first move to grill the president, to impeach the president. All right. Yes, Tiono, please go ahead. I think I can afford 1 more questions because 11:45.
Doctor, let me unmute him first. Tiono, you can open your unmute.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you for this lecture, wonderful lecture. Thank you so much. I got many things that I didn't know about. What I want to ask, among all these political systems, what is the most suitable for the people? What is the most suitable?
Good question.
And between the absolute monarchy and the constitutional monarchy,
Okay.
which one is the most?
Good questions, but I cannot answer. Now, the reason is my answer to my students is it is not a general generic answer. It depends on the country itself. I give you an extreme example. We talk about absolute monarchy. Today, world we feel that absolute monarchy is not a good one. But don't forget, a lot of dynasty, when they develop, when they progress, absolute monarchy is the reason for them to progress very fast and very well. Why? If the king is a capable person, if the king is a good person, is a best person, therefore he can make decision very fast. No need to consult people. I feel this is the right way, I straight away do it. Therefore, my progress will be faster and better. You talk about democracy, right? Even during COVID era, those countries that more democratic, well, can I have lockdown? Can I have like restricted movement? Oh, you have to consult this, consult that, consider this, consider that. Takes a long time. So depends on the society. But why today we feel that we feel not necessarily is a correct answer, but why we feel democracy is better than absolute monarchy? The reason is absolute monarchy or whatever country that practicing like autocratic, authoritarian, where a person or small group have the absolute power, why it is not inclined? The reason is if these people, they are good people, okay, that's good. But can you guarantee that whoever get to the position is good people? You can't. So one of the way is, the safer way is to have a mechanism, a system, to make sure that those who are in power, even they are not good, they cannot do things in a very bad way. Meaning, for example, constitutional monarchy, no matter the king is good or is a bad king, but the constitution will control the king. Meaning the king cannot behave in a too bad way. We have elections, meaning every few years, you can control the people, the leaders, that you cannot be too bad. If not, next election, you cannot win anymore. Therefore, to answer your questions, there's no simple answer on which system is the best system in the world. My answer to my students will be looking at the society, which system suits them more. All right? Sister, can I take up one more questions or I have to stop now? It's 49.
Yeah, inshallah that you can answer through the chat box maybe because we already passed off.
Yeah. All right. Sorry for passing the time.